Don't forget to text Lindsay Stapleton. It's her birthday.
Happy birthday, Lindsay.
That doesn't count.
Oh. Testing 1, 2, 3. I told her happy birthday yesterday, but I will text her today as well.
What are we talking about?
Welcome.
Oh.
Welcome to Emotionships, where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. I'm your host, Charlie Carroll, along with my clever co-host. Actually, with that shirt, let's say collegiate co-host.
Ooh, that's a new one. I think you used clever before.
Really? Well, you are my collegiate co-host, Mallory Redmond. Mallory, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
How are you feeling today?
I feel great. It's warming up a little bit this week.
It is. I had water coming through my ceiling last night because of ice on my roof. Yeah, it was not good.
What?
Yeah, there's nothing we could do about it either.
What do you mean?
What do you mean what I mean?
I feel like you live in a house that should not be leaky.
I don't know what you mean by that, but...
Yes, you do. But you just don't want me to go into it. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Where was it falling?
Out on the porch.
Oh,
Water was
you mean
coming.
your screened-in porch?
That one, yes.
Yeah.
We could afford to get it screened. Screened in. Life of luxury over here.
Oh man, I'm telling you. Well, that's probably the best place if you're going to have a leaky ceiling.
True.
That's the best place to do.
For sure. And thankfully, the floor that it was falling onto just was boards that it could fall through to the next level, which...
Just onto the hot tub.
Okay. Okay. You're revealing private information here.
I'm sorry.
Lord.
Change the subject. I'm sorry to hear that. That's unfortunate. But the ice is melting. So
way to go. You're good.
There's the upside.
Yeah. Ice is melting.
That's good.
Traveling today, going out of town. Business. Take care of business, Mel.
Really?
Yep.
It's a business trip?
Did I tell you about the time that I was late to the airport and I had to get creative?
Is this when you got arrested?
No.
Oh, because you were late to the airport then.
I was late to the airport then, and that was not creative.
Is this the wheelchair story?
Yeah.
Yeah. My husband loves this story.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I
mean, we were late. We were running behind. And
shocking.
Yeah, I know. It's new for me, but I'm whatever. And I said to Amy, like, you're just going to have to go with this. And she said, go with what? I said, well, I'm going to have to get us through TSA quickly. And she said, well, let's see how long the line is. And of course we get there and the line is forever long. It's like you're going to wait 40 minutes in the TSA line. I said, we can't do it. We'll miss our flights. And I think we were meeting someone somewhere. And so this is pre-pandemic, of course. And I turned around and walked back to the front doors and I utilized the truth, which is the week before I had stem cells injected into my lower back. And I just said, hey, I had a stem cell injection, which you just say stem cell injection. It's like everybody, bugs out. They don't know what to do.
Sure.
And they're like, okay. I'm like, so I need a wheelchair because I know that if you get a wheelchair, you don't stay in the TSA line.
Right.
You go right through. Yeah, you go right through. They take you right through. And anybody that's traveling with you gets to go right through the line. So ladies and gentlemen, maybe I've never given you a better tip ever here on Emotionships, the podcast, that if you are late and you're going to miss your flight because you can't get through the TSA line, find a way to get in that wheelchair. And one of those nice people that get paid a good wage will wheel you all the way. They do get paid a good wage. They'll wheel you all the way to your gate. And that's what happened. And so my wife was putting her head down as I was enjoying getting pushed.
Well, that's because you were the one getting pushed.
Yeah. I mean, she wasn't going to get in it. I told her she could get in it and do it. She was not up for that. And so they pushed me all the way up to our gate. I enjoyed surfing on my phone and being pushed and everybody looking at me. And they asked me if I wanted to be taken to my seat on the plane early before everybody else. To which I said, no, I'm okay.
No, this is enough for me.
I'll sit right here. And we got through. Little creativity. I didn't lie. I just said that I had a stem cell injection the week before.
Had you not had the stem cell injection, what would the story have been?
I mean, I probably would have stepped on my foot and told him my foot was hurting. I don't know.
So do you feel good about yourself?
I do. I feel really good about myself.
Okay.
At least in light of that story, I feel really good about myself.
Okay, go ahead and text us what you feel about Charlie right now.
Yeah, 937-303-4788. Text us how you feel about me.
Yeah,
And
in light of that
I don't know,
story.
maybe you'll get a prize. Is the same person texting you that's texting me right now?
Yes, it's a microphone issue.
Oh, okay. Well,
Sorry.
is it fixed now?
I don't know. Yes.
Okay, it's better.
It's just Gelman.
Oh, Gelman.
Gelman being Gelman. He's just earning his pay.
Can I tell you why my wheelchair? Let me see if I can say this. Let me
this is
try
going
it
well.
again.
Okay.
My wheelchair story. Can I tell you why it matters?
Yeah, please.
You don't have a choice, do you?
Well, not really.
Yeah. There has never been a time throughout all of history, right? Like if you can hear this sexy voice of mine and you're listening to this,
Oh.
there has never been a time throughout all of human history where the need for creative problem solving, i.e., entrepreneurial skills, has ever been greater. And what I did in that situation was say, okay, what tools are in front of me and what can I use in order to accomplish a very specific task? And so I think...
You know what you could have done, though?
Go ahead.
Show up to the airport on time.
For sure. But I don't even remember what had us running behind.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure it was something very legitimate.
I'm sure it was. And so that being said, even if it was my mistake, even if I was trying to get other things done or my entrepreneurial responsibilities were weighing me down, I don't know what it was. When you are faced with a problem, like very few problems ever appear at the right time. And so when you are faced with a problem, there's something about being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are professional problem solvers. Write that down.
But you created the problem.
For sure. How many of your problems aren't created by you?
But all of those people that were standing in line were like living in a society where they were obeying the guidelines.
Exactly. Good,
and that's the problem.
Good for them. No, they created an opportunity for me to be creative.
And you are the only one that benefited.
No.
You and your wife.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, the alternative was miss our flight and
Learn a lesson.
Sit in the airport for an hour. I did learn. Do you not think I learned an incredible lesson?
Of how
Use that wheelchair, baby.
I think maybe this analogy is breaking down. It's not going to.
No,
it's
not at
going
all.
To serve us.
It's going great.
You're the only one that benefited, and you
that's
screwed
not
a bunch
true.
of people over.
No one got screwed over?
They had to wait more time so that you
an
could
extra
get
120 seconds.
That's 120 seconds when you're waiting for a flight.
Okay, well, but also as an entrepreneur, and everybody's time is important. And so I came up with a creative solution to save myself time and money.
I know, but what did you do to other people's time?
I made a whole lot of people wait an extra minute and 20 seconds.
When you're waiting for a flight,
yeah,
every second counts.
Of course it does. Yeah.
And so if everybody did that, how many extra 120 seconds would people have to wait?
Well, not everybody's going to do that. It's the exception to the rule. And so I have flown. If you really want to get into this, we can. I have flown a lot, right? Like multiple times a month. That's the only time I've ever done that. It's an exception to the rule. Here's the point before you distract us here at Emotionships, the podcast. The point is creative problem solving, that there are problems that you're going to create for yourself or that you're just going to naturally stumble into that you have to have the ability in real time to get yourself out of. Mm-hmm. That's the main point.
I understand.
Here. Yeah. And so what I was saying is that there has never been a greater time throughout all of human history to need these entrepreneurial skills, which what we said are professional problem-solving skills. And the way I got there was I have been, early on in my life, I think I've grown out of it. I was dyslexic. And so often when I would take in information and process information, it would come out backwards. And so I just had a really hard time learning in school. And with the peer pressure of being in junior high and high school to get right answers in order to be a good person, I had to work twice as hard to come up with the same answer that everybody else came up with, because I just did not see it the same way. Like I had this learning disability. And so it trained me and taught me how to be a problem solver without coming at things from a traditional approach. And so, literally with this second round of the PPP, I submitted for one of our companies. I went to submit for one of our companies a second application to get more funds. And basically you had to demonstrate a 25% decrease in revenue in order to qualify for that. And thankfully, by using above board and completely like legitimate or legal accounting principles, like I could do that by looking at that second quarter in 2020 versus any other quarter, and was able to qualify it. And I think, the point is, even going back to getting through the airport, most people will see a problem and surrender to it immediately without any fight or bringing any creative energy to it. But there's something to be said. And my kids love the story about the wheelchair, and I love telling them that, and they like hearing it, not because I'm breaking the rules, as much as like coming up with a creative solution to a problem even I created. And so sometimes your inabilities will get you into trouble, and hopefully you have the creative resources or tools to get you out of that. And it should be like, if your whole life is spent living from or working from behind, then there's a problem. But ultimately, what I think is, in light of the pandemic, that's one thing. But even bigger than the pandemic, I think in light of all of the noise that exists in the marketplace today and online, there has never, ever, ever, ever been the need for having a toolbox of creative solutions or creative thinking than now.
I agree. I guess the question that what I would like to hear more about is how to, obviously I appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit,
Right.
but just wondering how you instill that in other people or in your children so I grew up being a rule follower. Like I didn't want to get in trouble, scared of getting in trouble.
That's why you're here, Mal. Mm-hmm. A resident rule follower.
And so I'm curious, like how you lead people into thinking creatively without like cutting in line all the time.
Sure. Well, you tried to save yourself with that all the time there at the end.
Not consciously, but
yes.
But that's the question, is like, I understand like the cutting corners and being creative and stuff like that, but sometimes that can be, and I'm blowing out of proportion like the 120 seconds, but that's the example. It's
Sure.
like all of these people were doing what they should be doing. And so how do you think creatively and come up with these new solutions without doing a disservice to people who are doing what they quote unquote should be doing?
Yeah, I think you highlight a really, really good point. And it's why some people listening to this podcast are still stuck. And that is, they are listening to and abiding by rules that someone else has set that is not against the law to break them.
I guess I'm not talking about being against the law more than like the greater good of people.
Yeah, for sure. And what I'm saying is, when there is a
to your point, to your example, like you are the one that benefited from that.
Correct.
The greater good did not benefit from that. And so I'm wanting to understand
that's not necessarily true. If the plane tickets, let's just say, were $300 a person, and my time is worth something, and I was going to have a whole day thrown off, and I don't remember where we were going or who we were meeting, but for me to creatively come up with a solution to where I did not cost myself an extra $300 or an extra 8 hours, of sitting in an airport in exchange for the 120 seconds, there is a level.
But that's all about you.
For sure.
So that's what I'm
For sure.
That's what I'm saying.
All of us are living our life primarily based on our own needs and our own interests.
And don't you think that's a problem?
I think it has to exist. I think that hopefully you have a set of guidelines that you're living by in order to accomplish a very specific task and purpose. And I think if, like in my case, where a lot of what I do is trying to prop other people up to serve other people, when there is a situation where you can save hundreds of dollars and a lot of time by costing other people. I mean, and the truth of the matter is, especially going through TSA, they have designed into their system a lane for people that are handicapped or that need a wheelchair. And so I utilized that lane based on telling them the truth, which was that I had had a stem cell injection, and it got me through and prevented me from moving all of these things. And as I said, hopefully it's the exception to the rule and not the rule. But ultimately, if we're going to make it about good versus evil or right versus wrong, even in just telling the story and helping people, maybe not in a TSA airport situation, see that rules are something that can be broken, or rules that are things that have been established by some sort of person or governing body in order to keep the majority of the sheep headed in the right direction. But yet you can jump that fence when it's not illegal in order to still accomplish a purpose. I mean, there are a lot of things that have been created for no other reason than people figuring out where that boundary was and why it was there, and if it made sense to do something differently. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And so I guess what I'm saying to you is I see the need, and I think if we're weighing positives versus negatives, I think overall, by the time the story is done, what other people learn from my ability to creatively solve a problem will far outweigh the 120 seconds I cost, if even that I cost other people.
Yeah, well, that's why I say the analogy breaks down, because
Sure.
When you're talking about the entrepreneurial spirit, usually it's a grander scale than 120 seconds for people. But that's kind of the question that I have, though, is how do you like gauge the decisions that you're making and the impact it has on other people in order to create successful businesses? Like the PPP thing. I mean, like there's a ton of businesses that need PPP money.
Sure.
And so if every business owner is being quote unquote creative in order to get theirs,
Sure.
when there's other businesses that probably would need it more, I'm just guessing that that's happening.
Well, they're not.
Where's the line?
Yeah, they're not going to run out of funds this time, like President Biden is talking about, and it actually just released something today to make it even better for small businesses, or to make it easier for small businesses to obtain funds. But obviously, we're working within these businesses. You know that in a number of my organizations that I have yet to make a penny and have a number of people employed. And so fighting for it is, again, what I think is important is to understand that if you are going to pierce through a very noisy market, or you are going to take that invention or that idea of yours and get it from where it's at right now to be heard, you are going to have a set of skills that allows you to think creatively. Yeah, there we go. Creatively to get around a lot of the rules that have been established to keep everyone and everything in place. And those are being controlled by people for their own selfish benefit in a lot of cases.
What do you mean?
That a lot of rules that have been established, ultimately, if you follow the money or the line of thinking, they have been put in place to get money out of people's pockets or to serve someone's interests if you follow the idea all the way through.
And I guess that's where it comes back to the problem with everybody putting themselves first.
Yeah, I don't think we would be lying if, like, let's take even Jesus' teaching about the greatest among you would be the servant of all. We still serve other people for our own self-interests, right? And so ultimately, at the end of the day, the best place is to start in being honest in recognizing that everything that we do is for our own interest. It is in our own interest. Even if that is laying your life down for other people, you're doing it because you think, according to Jesus' teaching, that that is what is best for you. And so I think too often we don't confront the narrative that says you have to be working in your own self-interest to meet the needs of other people. Even to meet the other needs of people. Like, this is what I feel like we are supposed to be. This is what I feel like we're supposed to do. This is how I feel like we're supposed to serve people. You have to stick to your vision and come up with creative ways to pierce through the noise and the busyness in order to keep that vision moving forward. Like, you have to have some sort of stubborn commitment to what you feel like you're called to or your self-interest in order to even meet the need of another person.
Sure.
And I don't think that we think about that enough. And so, again, ultimately, I will have to give account for my behavior. And there are plenty of times that I think I'm right in doing something that is good, or overall it's better in the interest of other people. That's not. And then I have to own that in hindsight. But let's, we would be lying and fooling ourselves if we did not acknowledge that everything that everybody does in a day is ultimately going to come back to what they think is best for them. And I think subconsciously we just don't take it far enough and ask enough whys. Like, why am I doing this? What is the purpose here? To understand that ultimately, even in creating great organizations that meet the need of people and alleviate poverty or drug abuse or whatever it is, like, you feel like you have a calling for you to do that, and you're going to act in your own self-interest in order to be true to yourself and serve a bunch of other people. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's better to be honest about that than to think that you live your life for other people.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying. I mean, it sounds like there's two different things you're saying. You're following your passion and what you feel like you're being called to do.
Yep.
Is one thing.
Yep.
But you're saying that is like serving yourself first.
Well, let's say that you had a sense of duty, or your faith led you to believe that your purpose in life is to serve other people, right? So you have this strong sense of purpose that you are to use your life to serve other people. And so let's say that wasn't the case, and instead you thought that the purpose of your life was to, like, I don't know, win the Nathan's hot dog eating championship. You would orient everything around your life to get prepared for winning that championship. It's different, but you're still orienting yourself around, like, what do I need to do in order to be good at winning this hot dog eating championship? Even for people in a faith-based environment that are, like, listening to the words of Jesus, that the greatest among you will be the servant of all, you're still doing what you think is best for you, which is serving other people in order to fulfill your religious understanding of what greatness looks like. And so I think that and I think that's fine. I don't think there's...
Well, I think that's what should be happening.
Sure.
Is that people are doing what they think is best for them, the calling that they feel is on their life.
And so ultimately what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, all behavior is behavior to act in our self-interest.
Yeah, but if your self-interest is living into your truest calling, and that is serving other people, then that's not selfish.
No, I don't think it is selfish. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it is selfish to act in your self-interest.
So you're, okay.
Go on, let's unpack this here.
Well, so then you're saying, I think this is a different conversation from, like, the cutting in front of hundreds of people at the TSA line.
I think it's the same thing, in that people will want to make it a moral decision or a moral judgment that I was acting in my own self-interest in order to save hundreds of dollars and hours of time by exercising a loophole that is there to not have to spend as much time in that line when I normally spend as much time in that line. But but utilize this to get through and make it an exception.
Yes, I think that was selfish.
I would say that I was acting in my own self-interest, and people are always acting in their own self-interest. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure, it just looks differently. I guess it just looks differently.
Well, it tends to be the rule followers that say, "Hey, that's not fair," but the truth of the matter is,
there has to be some standards to society.
There are standards to society.
Right, like standing in line.
And I think you're upset that I utilized, or it bothers you that I utilized a loophole that they created and put there. And it's typically the rule followers that are saying that are shaking their fist that I utilized an opportunity to get through and do that and use that.
I just think that, I guess I think it's selfish. Because all you're saying is, I wanted to save time, I wanted to save money, I wanted to get to my flight.
So
it's I.
So you think the right decision in that situation was what?
Get to the airport on time.
Okay, so when that option is no longer there, what do you think was the right decision?
People miss flights every day, buddy.
Right, but if you don't have to break the law and you can utilize something that is there for you, you're saying that you think the right decision was just to wait in line and miss the flight.
Yeah, consequences.
That's fair. Getting back to what we were trying to talk about.
What are we trying to talk about?
I don't think that you can birth a business or create an idea. There is so much noise in the marketplace today. And when it comes to creative problem solving and bringing solutions to the world to serve people, it is such a noisy marketplace and crowded by big industry that often the people that are best equipped to solve a problem or to come up with a real solution are the people that are on the ground, the people that have their hands in any given situation. But rarely can they be heard. And so when you can't be heard, you have to find ways to get out of line and be heard and be found and be discovered. And so I stand by my statement that I have never, I don't think there's ever been a time throughout human history where people can see or develop a set of skills to creatively meet the needs of other people.
For sure.
And that, I think, is primarily twofold. It is with the pandemic that people are scared and fearful and having to do things and behave in ways that they've never behaved before. And then also that, again, I think we'll see huge changes over the next couple of years in social media because it's ran its course. And whereas it used to be, it started off that, you could get access to or feel like you knew, Michael Jordan because now he's on Twitter and sharing pictures and thoughts about his personal life, where it used to be you had no access to that whatsoever. Now for the last 15 years, you've had access to that. And anything that exists over a period of time, people get used to, and it's no longer effective in accomplishing its purpose. And so I think we see that with social media now, that there's more noise and people are used to having direct access to people. And so now when you go on and you have a good idea or a good product or something that can change a lot of lives, there's so much volume out there that it's hard to get substance. And so I think we're going to see real changes in social media as we need to create a new channel or a new way that really, really good ideas can get from the bottom floor where people have their hands on these issues to out to more people. And so I think that requires, for a society to exist, there has to be people like you and people like me. And people like you invent people like me.
I can't tell if you're being degrading or not.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, because it could be, the roles could be reversed. And that's, I think from a Christian standpoint, that's the idea of the body that, like, if there is no like standard set, and this is how things exist. And I'm not I'm not limiting this to like the illustration of the line at the airport. There are people that, even if we use like the Enneagram as a standard or different personality tests, it's like the contrast of who we are as individuals that make people different and unique. And so like I'm different in a number of ways, but it's I tend to see rules as opportunities or like flags begging to be tested and questioned. Is this legitimate? Where did it come from? Is it serving people? Does it actually have its purpose? Or is this just something that we've been doing because we've been doing? And there are people that are less like me, that are more like yourself, that are like, okay, here are the parameters that I've been given. I'm going to abide by the parameters, and I'm going to be really successful within them and have this way that I operate. And I don't think one is right or wrong. I think that there's a way that things start to happen, but then there are people that are oriented more like myself that tend to, and Gilman's a person like this as well, that it's just like, really, who says? And obviously that gets us in trouble at times because we're not always right about jumping the fence or pushing that boundary that it actually does exist. And it's a good, it was there for a reason. And you push on it. And when you push on it, you figure out like, I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't smart type of thing. But I think that we have to view each other in the context of a community, and that there are needs for all kinds of gifts and ways or viewpoints. It's not really a viewpoint, ways that we approach things.
So somebody who has a good idea or wants to start a business, what are you trying to say to them? That they need to be more comfortable breaking rules?
No, I think in general, because it's not going to work if we zoom too far in on just making it rules. I think it's questioning the norm is what the illustration was meant to highlight. And that is often the norm has been established by a way of doing things that made sense in the time that norm was established. I think it's just most of the time we all live in a way that works with our mind, that wants to establish boundaries that, again, were established for a very specific reason at a very specific time by a certain person. But what I'm saying is that there has never been a greater need for being able to think outside of the box and question the norm in order to create something that might not work immediately, but you're going to have to spend 10 years working on it in order to have it ready when people are willing to adopt it. I'll give you an example. I laughed at Netflix when it first came out because I thought it was ridiculous that they would ever overthrow Blockbuster. But the infrastructure wasn't there for high-speed internet at the time, where you could download a 4 to 8 gigabyte movie and watch it in high definition. And I would like to think that I was the only idiot out there that thought Netflix was not going to work.
Well, they started by delivering DVDs to your house.
Correct.
It wasn't how it is now.
Nope, correct. And then even the executive board at Blockbuster laughed it off. They laughed Netflix off and thought that they had such a head start and had so much revenue that Netflix was not a real threat. And someone at Netflix, obviously the group, thought that they had enough of a winning idea that time would catch up to them and time would mature into them. And eventually there would be this cross street of opportunity, or this intersection of opportunity that they would be ready for, but they had to push the boundaries, right? Or the norm at the time, because those norms would go away based on things changing and evolving and technology advancing. And so it's a good example of why today, more than ever before, there's a need for questioning the norm, because the norm's going to change. The norm has always changed. And so, again, you said, and you're right, that analogies fall short. But the idea behind getting the wheelchair and getting through the line creatively is the creative thinking that you have to have in order to look at where life stands today and say, okay, maybe this is a boundary that was set a long time ago that is going to dissolve due to advancements in technology or the way that a community handles itself. And in doing so, like I follow, I subscribe to a group of financial traders that basically use their combined 150 years of knowledge to sell a newsletter to where they tell you where they think the market is going based on their experience. And a couple of months ago, actually toward the end of last year, they were giving you ideas for companies that can thrive once 5G cellular gets into place and there's access to more data faster. And so it's a way of them saying, hey, this isn't necessarily here yet, but these are companies that are available and affordable right now that you might want to purchase because the rules are going to change. Right now, the rules say that you can only download this much data per second via a cell phone. Well, technology is changing to where all of that is going to go away. And when that goes away or that norm changes, here are companies that are going to thrive and benefit from that. And so all I'm saying is that there has never been, and we see this, right? Like Amazon is a big company, but they're setting up hundreds of thousands of people to run their own business and deliver stuff for them, right? They're diversifying. That's happening everywhere, even like with Uber, the shared economy is what it's called. And so, you will best position yourself to get your idea or your passion out there and serve the world if you can understand that you need creative problem-solving skills in order to challenge the norm, because the norm is always changing and is going to go away. That's ultimately what I want to say.
So do you think that it's something that can be learned, or is it just in some people?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that some people are more wired to be that way than others. Definitely.
So,
But again, I do think it has to be learned. Like Etsy, these different platforms now, it started with Pinterest, which started off as a crafting platform, are empowering people to own their own business and bring their solutions to the world without a lot of overhead and having to have deep pockets. And so I'm sure it's some resources that you and I will work on creating. There's the gift and there's the grace. I definitely think that there are people that have the gift to play soccer, but everybody has the grace to play soccer. And so I think that there's going to be people like me that, was raised being left-handed, which, that's a whole different story of left-handers just approaching the world differently, but then also being dyslexic. So and then I was raised with a grandfather and a father that were entrepreneurs. So like I have been positioned biologically, but then also from a relational standpoint to see norms as just that, like they're things to be challenged. There are a lot of people out there that they live by the norm. That's their thing. And so for me, I'm more oriented that way, but I think everybody needs a certain amount of those skills.
but so if somebody's listening and they're like, well, I hear that I have the grace for it, but I don't know that I have the gift. What would you tell them?
I mean,
if they see the world or have been raised to see the world a certain way and want to be more expansive in their viewpoints?
I'll answer that, but I'm really interested as to what you would say about it, because you come more from the like, hey, these are the guidelines. I'm going to do really well within these guidelines. As an entrepreneur yourself, and obviously we've been working together now for a couple of years, how have things changed for you, or where do you see yourself in like, and obviously you're like, not an extreme rule follower because you have to exist in an entrepreneurial world, but how do you see that for yourself? Like, where do you think that exists? The balance in those things, like the gift and the grace.
I mean, I'm not I'm really not an entrepreneur, but I think just my views of, I don't know that I would call myself a rule follower.
Okay.
I did call myself a rule follower. I said that when I was a kid, I was.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I am now. And I think part of that is my whole adult life, I've been a woman in a man's world.
Yeah.
I've been like, usually I'm the only woman at the table. And so that has forced me to have to
challenge the norm.
Yeah. I mean, I see things differently than men do usually.
Sure.
So it has hearing, when you're the only woman in a room full of men, their opinions can often be very loud. And so I have heard other viewpoints and contrasted it with my own. And I think just simply doing that has expanded my view of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of it is like listening to other people. For me, that's just listening to other viewpoints, listening to how people see things and contrasting it to how I see things and recognizing like the world's a lot bigger than what I see through my eyes.
What do you think we're driving? You just mentioned two behaviors, like speaking up and challenging the norm after listening in the right environment. What do you think motivated that? Being pissed off or like what gave you the courage or power or what have you to do that?
Probably being pissed or stubborn, just the desire to be heard. I mean, I think we all have a desire to be heard. And so when I feel drowned out or like my voice isn't being heard, it either leads me to speak louder or the alternative is I get silenced.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times I've tried to just speak louder.
So what would you say to two people? First, to women out there that maybe they're not as far along in their journey as you are. What would you say to them about getting their ideas and their ideas and input or wisdom heard? And then what would you say to mothers who are raising young girls as to how to best prop them up to A, be aware of it, but then B, like do it, live in what is a man's world?
I mean, I think you just have to feel like a bitch sometimes and continue.
And be okay with that.
Be okay with it. I mean, it requires a lot of, and I have worked with overwhelmingly a number of really, really good men. So I'm not like this crazy uber feminist that thinks
Sure.
men suck.
Isn't it amazing that you can't stand up for yourself? I think people would say that I'm an alpha male. Isn't it amazing that, this is my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, that as a woman, you can't stand up for yourself and be forceful and assertive without being a bitch?
Oh, it's insane.
And it's all or nothing.
Well, and the other thing
It seems
that's
like it.
really irritating is that I can't have this conversation without like saying that I also respect men.
Sure.
Like it's because,
And that's what I mean by the all or nothing.
yeah, people like to see things black and white. And so, yeah, I think it requires, there's like there has to be, I think for everybody, like a softness or a tenderness and sharing your opinions, recognizing that that people see things in a variety of ways. And so it's not like, this is how I see it, and so this is how it is. But I think there is a fight to be heard. Yeah. And that's what that's how I am and want to be raising my girls is you deserve to be listened to. I want them to know that their voice matters, even if it's gibberish right now, yeah, which it is for the most part. I want them to know that I hear them.
So practically, as a mother yourself, raising young girls, that looks like what?
A lot of patience because they talk a lot.
Yeah.
And so just responding to, and I think there was an episode, I don't know if it's come out yet or not, but just about raising curious kids. And I think that's part of it is like letting them ask their questions and responding to them and not writing them off or ignoring them because I'm sick of listening.
Yeah.
Because kids talk a lot.
So I don't know, and maybe you can comment on this. I don't know. The thought that standing up for yourself and being a voice that deserves to be heard in any given room tends to communicate back to you, you're a bitch.
And I think just as you're saying that, because I'm like thinking back to your airport story, and like, I think part of like what gets to me, like gets to like a tender part of my heart is like, but all those people they deserve to be heard too. And so I hear what you're saying about like, well, you got to fight for it and you just got to go through and like challenge it. But I think that that's like, maybe that's a very feminine part of me where it's like, but all those people were in line too. And like, I'm sure that they wanted to speak up and they didn't know how. And so how can we like see them and notice them without just flying past them in the wheelchair and getting on your plane?
Yeah, sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
And so like, I think that's a lot of the kind of energy that I've brought to various like conference rooms that I've been in is like the what about.
Sure.
That a lot of people, men in particular, might not.
Yeah.
We're just different. People are different. So I think that's why it's important to be like hearing other people's voices and letting them have a chance to speak. And because there are, one, so many different opinions and viewpoints, and two, people who just have not been afforded the opportunity to even know how to challenge boundaries or to be heard or to get themselves where they need to be in a timely fashion without standing in line themselves.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is the very skills you are using in order to push the boundaries and challenge the norm, even if it is so that everybody's voice is heard or that a woman's voice is heard in a man's world, are the creative, like, problem-solving skills that are required. And people would not be benefiting from or knowing or maybe hearing you if you did not exercise those skills to challenge the norm in the first place. Does that make sense? What I was going to ask you is, because I can't answer this, what percentage of the thought or the words "you're a bitch" do you think are real, and what percentage do you think is a story that we make up in our head because it's what we were told? Someone else said that.
What do you mean?
To try to control, like the thought, like when you speak up and say, or you hear, you speak up and challenge a norm as a woman in a man's world, and you hear this idea of, well, it's only a bitch that does that, or you're being bitchy, right?
Oh, I don't think it's bitchy.
No, well, I'm not saying that you think that, but you hear that.
Yeah.
What percentage of that do you think are your own thoughts from what other people have said in the past, and what percentage of that do you think is real? And the reason I ask that is because as someone that challenges the norm, you're always going to have to confront the voices in your head.
Sure.
And so then how I would follow that question up with is like, obviously you're challenging those voices in your head and you're still doing it, whether it's 90% real and 10% fake, or 10% real and 90% fake, you're still challenging those voices. And so my question would be like, what are the skills required in order to challenge the narrative that is between our head in order to push the boundaries or to challenge the norm?
I don't know the percentage. I mean, I think it's such a cultural narrative.
True.
Rather than a personal one.
I agree.
And so I don't know like what people are actually thinking about me. I mean, I get told that I'm like a strong woman.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what that means. Like, I don't know what's beneath that. I think there's a
Probably
number of
just
things
not getting
beneath
pushed
that.
around, right?
Yeah. I mean, but I think that there's like a level of bitchiness that is implied in telling a woman that she's strong.
Right.
For some people. And maybe that's just between my ears, but I can stomach being seen as bitchy more than I can stomach being silenced.
Sure.
And so I think that's what does it for me, is like, well, I'm just going to plow through and let people think that I am whatever they want to think because I so badly want to be heard.
Yeah.
And think I have something to offer.
Sure, for sure. It really is amazing. I'm going to take heat for this one. It doesn't matter, though. It really is amazing how much of a man's world it is. And you can't even question how much of a man's world it is without being attacked, whether you're a male or a female, as being a feminist or somebody that is quote unquote liberal.
I mean, I have had people would be very surprised at some of the stories I could tell. Even, I mean, I've had to sit down with somebody I worked with at a church and say like, hey, you're making all of these comments about like feminism and girl power every time I speak. You have a daughter. Like, what, don't you want your daughter to be a strong woman who can bring her voice to the table and make decisions and be confident in her skin? And like, that's working in a church, which like might really surprise some people and probably doesn't surprise people at all. No, but like, I've had to have really hard, awkward conversations with men that I work with who like, I still think about their daughters sometimes and wonder like, I wonder how she's doing.
For sure.
Because like most men will say like, I want to raise a strong and confident daughter. And then they work with women who are strong and confident. And it's like, they have a real issue with it.
That's why I have said, I'm not going to let my daughter be a cheerleader. There is a lot of things that she can do with her time that is much better than cheering for stinky boys.
I was a cheerleader.
Well, that's before you probably realized the error of your ways.
Thank you.
I mean, that it's so true. Welcome to 1950 with girls with pom-poms and skirts on showing their legs off. Like, they're an object to be consumed. And listen, judge me. I don't care. I sit at my son's basketball games and I see these cheerleaders and it's just like, what in the world is this cultural thing here that we have yet to confront? That these girls exist to cheer boys on. And I mean, that's my opinion about it.
Yeah.
And so I've just said to my daughter, like, you have much better things that you can do with your time than wear a skirt to show your body off and cheer boys on.
The skirt was what I wanted. That's why I did the cheerleading.
For sure.
It's a fun little uniform. But there's a level of athleticism to it, but it is solely in order to cheer boys on. Yes, I'm with you.
I mean, that's what it is.
I'm with you.
That's what it is. I was at a school last week for my son's basketball game, and here are these cheerleaders. It's changed a lot. It's not what it was when you were a kid. I think it tends to be less of an emphasis, because I feel like when I was in school and when my parents were in school, like, that was the thing you did if you were a cool girl, like you were a cheerleader. Now I think, it's more acceptable for, girls to be good at soccer, to be good at basketball, to be good at golf, like all of those things like never before.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's just, to me, there's still so much of a narrative with young women that you exist to be shown off, like to have your makeup perfect and your hair look a certain way and to fit a cultural norm. And if you look really good and you have whatever the right body means, but you have the right body, then you need to be put out there as an object of value that cheers on someone else. And I just think it's ridiculous. But a lot of my conservative mothers, I don't know that they'll agree. My conservative mother friends.
What would you say this episode is about?
I mean, that's Gelman's problem. He can figure that out.
Oh, we do have a question.
I love questions.
I feel like Hitler creatively solved a quote unquote problem. Didn't find his decision selfish either.
Is that a statement?
I think so.
I think
maybe
that's
I
a
shouldn't
statement.
have. Should we edit that out? Would you like to respond to that?
I mean, again, it's very easy to get off track here and talk about like bending a specific rule. But
do you wish you would have told a different story?
No, not at all.
Okay,
I think this is a good conversation.
Great.
Ultimately, it comes back to most people are not smart enough to realize that the rules have been created at a very specific time for a very specific reason. And the world changes when you sometimes accidentally push the boundaries. There are a lot of examples of how life has gotten better for thousands, if not millions of people because somebody was willing to push a boundary. And again, there are consequences to pushing boundaries. The speed limit is a boundary. And when you push it, you put yourself in a realm where you can get yourself hurt and ultimately even lose your life and take other people's lives. It's not black or white. We love living in a black and white society where it's either all right or all wrong. But if we said that nobody can push the boundaries or challenge rules and cultural norms, the world would be it would not be as good of a place as it is. And so to each person that wants to pick that fire up and challenge it, there are real consequences to it. I mean, I can give an example recently where I am dealing with a situation because I pushed a boundary that I thought was reasonable and the government did not think it was reasonable. And so it can definitely get you in trouble. But that's my decision to make.
Well, and I think that takes us back to the entrepreneurial. I mean, even just the definition of someone who's willing to take on more risk.
Yeah.
And so if you're not willing to take on risk, then you can't call yourself an entrepreneur.
For sure. This country would not exist if it were not for entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of great things that come with that and the potential to add life to a lot of people. And then there are liabilities that come with that.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to somebody as we're closing?
Yeah.
Who, going back to the question about the grace versus the gift, like they don't feel like they have the gift, what would you tell them to start doing in order to notice boundaries and start to push on them a little bit?
Yeah, it's really easy for me. And that is, step one, find what you are passionate about that has brought life to you. Step two, figure out how you can give that life that idea, thought, or product has brought to you. Start thinking about how you can share that with more people. And what you're going to find is when you go to share life with more people, there are a lot of natural boundaries that were created a long time ago, and maybe not so long ago, that will get in your way. And those are the first things that you're going to have an opportunity to cut your teeth on when it comes to challenging the norm for the greater good.
That's much better than my answer. Well done.
Until next time.
You got to go catch your flight or else you might have...